Here, I'm here. We're live every weekday on Fancred. Thanks for downloading us to your phone, tablet, and we're going to be bringing you a lot of football talk today. A lot. We've got Andrew Siciliano coming up. That'll be in a few minutes from NFL Network and Red Zone Channel. You already knew that. NFL Now on NFL Network. Avid hiker, avid traveler, Andrew Siciliano. So it'll be a fun conversation with him. Friend of the show has come on before. And coming up later, we got a couple of newcomers to the show. Bob Sochi, the radio voice, radio play-by-play guy for the New England Patriots, will be joining us. That's in the next hour. And Boston Globe sports media columnist and Boston.com columnist Chad Finn will join us as well, and we'll talk all things sports media. And certainly there's a lot to talk about as it pertains to Boston, as it pertains to national. That's something that we're going to get into on the show today here on Sports by Brooks on Fancred. My name is Brooks Melchior, and we are live from Los Angeles. We do this every weekday, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern time, with you for a couple of hours normally, bringing you a litany of guests, litany of information that you're more than likely either unaware of. You may be aware of the subject topic, but what we're going to bring you in the way that we have brought it to you in the past at SportsbyBrooks.com is something that is going to illuminate you on a subject. That's why we're here. We're not here to just backwash what everyone else is doing. So if you stick around today, you're going to find out that's exactly what we do. And you're going to want to check in on the show every day, 9 a.m. out on the Pacific Coast, where I am today. So we're going to be talking about the Patriots and the Cowboys coming up. And I have some thoughts about particularly the Cowboys. And I think there's something going on there that doesn't necessarily bode well for the Patriots defense or the rest of the NFL, I think, as the season progresses, and the bank account of Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, because what we're witnessing in Dak Prescott really is extraordinary, what he's done this season. And I'm not going to say he's done it quietly, because you can't do anything quietly as a member of the Cowboys, especially as a quarterback of the Cowboys. But, I've got to give Jerry Jones some credit in some ways. This has always been his guy. This is a guy he reached for in the draft, not reached for in that he reached too high, got him in the 4th round, Mississippi State. It was a genius pick, clearly. And now we're starting to see Dak Prescott beginning to transcend the idea that he is wholly reliant on Zeke Elliott, Amari Cooper, or other pieces in that offense. Perhaps Kellen Moore is playing a major role as offensive coordinator. Of course, red zone when Jason Garrett tries to foul everything up, getting conservative. But we're starting to see a transformation. It's a little bit like when you have major things going on in history, but because you're in the middle of them and you don't really see that overall arc of something that's going on over a lengthy period of time. This is, I know, just a few months in the NFL season, but still, we're not really seeing, that arc necessarily in individual performances from Dak. Obviously, he's had great performances, but a lot of times those performances have been in the context of the Cowboys not necessarily winning big or making a splash as a team, but he's quietly putting together a remarkable season. And if you compare him to some of the more prominent quarterbacks out there, like a Russell Wilson, like a Pat Mahomes now, he is statistically more and more catching up to those guys, and in some ways surpassing those guys. Maybe not those two particular guys right now, but he's approaching that level. And you remember that Dak Prescott turned down $30 million a year. And I'm like you. I remember when he did that, and we're thinking to ourselves, what is he doing? Well, now I think we're starting to see exactly what he was thinking. It's becoming a realization. And again, it may be a product of Kellen Moore. It may be a product of the offensive scheme of the Cowboys. But nonetheless, it's happening. A transformation into elite status. A guy who is a playmaker unto himself. And now we start to hear about the franchise tag. That's starting to make the rounds. We're going to talk to Andrew Siciliano about that, get his thoughts on it, coming up from NFL Network and Red Zone Channel. But all of a sudden, the franchise tag starts bouncing around in the media. What a surprise. And what that tells me is now you've got Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones starting to think to themselves and leak to people in the media that perhaps they're not going to get him signed. And why? Why is that? Well, because they waited too long, and now they're not going to be able to afford it. I guess they could always afford anything, right? Of course you can. But if you want to pay other people on that roster, it might not be practicable to pay Dak Prescott at the levels now that he is starting to earn. So if he is franchised over the last 2 years of his contract, you're now looking at $33 million in that first year after the season. And next year, that is 2 seasons from today, $40 million. And that's, of course, what was originally asked for. And Prescott could certainly elevate the market for quarterbacks, bridge it, I think, as we get towards a contract for Pat Mahomes down the line. So I wanted to point that out as we head into the Cowboys and the Patriots game. We're going to be breaking that down coming up with Andrew. And, of course, we'll talk to Bob Sochi, the radio play-by-play voice of the New England Patriots. A lot of things happening over the last 48 to 72 hours, if you haven't seen, and we're going to get to some of these things before it's over today. One of them is, and you may not have seen this because it just played out this morning, an apology that came from Charles Barkley, and we have that covered, and we'll talk about it coming up for you. But Charles Barkley apologized to a reporter earlier today. Turner Sports PR releasing a statement from Barkley saying of a comment that he made to an Axios.com reporter, Alexi McCammond, female Axios reporter, a statement from Charles Barkley from Turner Sports PR on Twitter today. And the quote is from Barkley: "My comment was inappropriate and unacceptable. It was an attempted joke that wasn't funny at all. There's no excuse for it, and I apologize." Now, as I'm saying this to you, you're probably saying, what in the hell, Brooks, is he apologizing for? No kidding. Well, we found out earlier today from Alexi McCammond, if I can find it. And this came last night at an event where she related in a tweet. I'm quoting the tweet. "Just FYI, Charles Barkley told me, quote, I don't hit women, but if I did, I would hit you," unquote. And then when I objected to that, he told me, quote, that I couldn't take a joke, unquote. So that's what he was apologizing for. We'll get into that later. But first, we're going to go out to our sports celebrity hotline and talk to Andrew Siciliano, Red Zone Channel, NFL Now on NFL Network. Nice enough to join us. And we'll be talking. Yeah, right. There we go. Hey, got the, I like the hat. Yeah, very, very nice.
In my kitchen.
Now, you're in great shape, by the way. And I know you're an avid, you are. What are you talking about? You're an avid hiker. You're in great shape. I mean, it's obvious. But you're an avid hiker, right?
It's sad.
So you map out hikes?
Basically traversed, went around Switzerland, and then back around.
Now, is this camping? Do we have a tent? Wow.
Into 110 days. In
We're visiting with Andrew Siciliano, Red Zone Channel, NFL Now, NFL Network. I love watching you because you always have the different angles in the way that you approach things on NFL Network. And one thing that you brought up that I don't think people are mentioning enough is the Myles Garrett situation and just how out of character it is. And because I think that there's some cognitive dissonance, then people are saying, well, he's a good guy. This isn't normal for him. But I mean, what are your thoughts about that and how it's been covered? And maybe that's been left out.
to be people around the league that would never do it. So as the person that is not watching a lot of football, maybe your significant other that turns on Good Morning America and sees this horrible story, and it is a horrible story, and thinking, oh my God, this guy's horrible, and a scofflaw, and he's dirty.
Scofflaw.
Myles Garrett is one of the players. You get what I'm saying. Myles got on the billboard promoting the league. He digs wells in East Africa with Chris Long. Look, Myles Garrett was the guy a month ago, true story, stopped, who punched him in the face, quite literally.
It's amazing.
And he does.
It's almost miraculous too that this is the first time. That's all right. What kind of soup are we doing here? Are you a healthy now? Do you ever do fast food? You don't do fast food, do you?
You know
what's fast food to you?
I mean, on the road on Thursday nights, yeah. Stadium fried food, stadium foods. Kind of
so
things.
You never go to In-N-Out?
In-N-Out, although I do love it on the way home. I'm not. But no, it's not my go-to. I'd eat healthy 100 times.
You work out at the gym?
No, fast food. During football season, it's rough. But it's rough. it's just.
Yeah, I
when
mean,
I was
if anybody
younger
is
that I
now,
do not
that's kind of an
have.
overrated thing to say, and being in the media as I have been for many, many years, that we love our job and it's 24/7. But someone who is doing, you invented the Red Zone channel, and then you do a show called NFL Now. It really is 24/7. I mean, is it not? Are you in contact with your producers round the clock for NFL Network and dealing with that?
I would say it's here in Los Angeles.
Remember it well.
Um, Ram.
Right, right. It's unbelievable. Visiting with Andrew Siciliano, Red Zone Channel, NFL Now on NFL Network. What to make of Phil Rivers?
Tough ones.
What? Now, wait, is this like a home? Wait. Is this a homemade soup? What? Your, wait a minute. Stop the presses. Oh, okay. Well, that's, but it's Blue Apron.
Single one. I do plenty of my own. There you go. During this,
Okay.
tried every single one of
Right.
so
I'm a chunky guy. Chunky.
See, hey, back to that. But build and this point. We
But Phil Rivers isn't the answer to sell tickets, right?
they did. December a couple of weeks ago, I asked that 100 times. Nobody had. So said back to back in the second half of like this. If they come to you and you when James and they'll so much.
Man, I can't thank you enough for coming on, and I really, really appreciate it. Really enjoy these kinds of visits. So thank you so much, man, for taking the time.
Don't forget.
Travel safe, man. Stay in touch.
See South on the line.
It's Andrew Siciliano, Red Zone Channel, NFL Network, NFL Now. First look on Thursday Night Football. So great to have him on from his kitchen making soup. And I guess he's got the blue apron thing. When I said, wow, this is homemade, because he had the chicken was separate as he's making chicken soup. And he plans ahead. Isn't that, I mean, that's pretty impressive. I can't do anything like that. I can't plan ahead. It's like, whoa, whatever's closest to my mouth at the moment that I decide I'm hungry, right? That's where we're going. That's what a Wiener Schnitzel, whatever it is, right down the street. So, but we got some updates from Andrew Siciliano on the NFL at large. Fascinating conversation about Myles Garrett and the Chargers. A little insight there. We talked about Phil Rivers yesterday. I just don't see Phil Rivers making the throws. I don't see him making the deep outs. Now, he's got that 3/4 weird delivery. He is an amazing guy, because when you watch him, he just never looks impressive. He just never has. But somehow he's a guy that just gets it done. And man, do I hate that cliche. Just gets it done. But he does. He's one of those guys. And but that was such a colossal debacle. That was like a Luke Falk performance against the Chiefs at times on Monday, that, so you're torn, because he's making these decisions that a veteran doesn't make, and he's doing it over and over again, right? So you say to yourself, well, he's a veteran, so he's not going to keep doing that because he's been around a long time. But why is he doing that? Is he doing it because he doesn't have a supporting cast? Does he not have an offensive line? Does he not have the arm strength? What is the issue? And I would tend to side with the latter, the physical part of it. I think he doesn't have the sort of confidence in himself physically at this point to be able to execute in those crucial moments. It's just astounding, some of the issues that he had against the Chiefs. So, and when you talk about and of course we're here in Los Angeles, and I drive by, I may do it today after the show. The Inglewood Stadium is no more than 15 minutes from here. So I'll go down there and check it out. Of course, I don't know why. At this point, you really can't tell what the hell's going on, even if you knew what was going on, right? But it's remarkable what's happening down in Inglewood, though, I might add. If you don't know Los Angeles, you probably heard Inglewood, right? From your favorite rap song or hip hop or whatever it may be. But that's, of course, where the Fabulous Forum still is. And right across the street from what looks like a spaceship, this new stadium, $5 billion stadium. $5 billion stadium. And so you have that. You're eventually going to have the Clippers $1 billion arena right there. And this is in the heart of Inglewood, California. And you may or may not know, Inglewood is not really a prosperous area of Los Angeles. It has been in the past, like so many neighborhoods that we all know, or small towns, cities. This is really a small city, Inglewood. But you go through, the downtown main district of Inglewood, and you've got a lot of department store buildings that are boarded up. You've got a lot of rundown motels. Not all. There are some exceptions. But now things are starting to change. And we're going to see a huge transformation of that area. And it really is a great thing to have gone through Inglewood, driven through that area for many years as I have. I mean, you can't help it if you're going to drive to downtown Los Angeles and you're not going to take the freeway. I mean, you go through Inglewood. But but to see the economic impact of it. Now, of course, there's the gentrification and the raising of the rents, and in that way, sure, it's really unfortunate. A lot of people are going to be priced out that have lived there their whole lives, no doubt about it. And who's to say, at the end of the day, as a whole, this is a good thing for that area of Los Angeles. But, there's going to be a lot of people making a lot of money who are existing residents, property owners, building owners, and whatnot. I know there are a lot of those people who don't live in Inglewood either. I recognize that. But as a whole, it's easy for me to say over here on the west side, but it's going to be an improvement on the city of Inglewood. And it's really going to be fascinating to see just how complete that transformation will end up being, because we've all heard about these stadium development things, and, how definitive really will it be? Coming up, we'll talk to Boston Globe sports media columnist and writer for Boston.com, Chad Finn. If you listen to podcasts, sports media podcasts by Richard Deitch, Jimmy Train over at SI, still does one, Chad Finn, I know, has guested on those podcasts many, many times and on ESPN. So we're fortunate to have him, and we're going to talk. Right now, what's happening in New England, we're really doing a deep dive on the Boston market. I went to Boston Market, by the way, yesterday. There's still a Boston Market down the street from where I live. Went there yesterday. Didn't have the prime rib ready yet. Got to wait till after 5. I don't know if you guys still have Boston Market. It was Boston Chicken, and that's how old I am. Boston Market. And they're all shutting down in Los Angeles, but we still have one hanging on somehow. But we've been talking about the Boston sports market with our Patriots coverage, and now we're going to talk sports media, because it really is fascinating what's happening, particularly as it pertains to Rob Gronkowski, which, by the way, our producer Cam Smith is in Boston today, and so he's going to help us out with some clips, and so we're going to, and I want to make sure I get this on before we have Chad Finn come on and talk about it, because I want to talk to him about Rob Gronkowski's comeback, right? So Rob Gronkowski, you probably are aware of, when we ran the clip, we were one of the first people to have this clip yesterday. And thanks to my producer, Cam Smith, we actually ran it. I wasn't going to run it, but he understood the import of the clip, and we ran it. It was the comeback announcement clip, which was actually a Super Bowl party that he's going to be helping to slap his name on. I don't know about hosting it, putting his name on it, showing up and drinking with his dad, who Gronk's dad, I think, is manipulating these situations quite a bit. So Gronk has a television show, if you don't know, that he's going to be participating on. And as I set up this clip, because Rob Gronkowski last night was a dancer during the Lakers Oklahoma City Thunder game at Staples Center. Rob Gronkowski, yes, that guy. He was a Laker girl dancer. And so he was out on the court dancing. And from what I understand, it was part of this new television show that he's on. So if we can bring that clip up, that'd be great, Cam, of Rob Gronkowski. Go ahead and play that, and I'll give you a quick little commentary. Now, that's a graphic that I stuck in there. That's the name of the show.
Game itself. That, by the way, that's Venus Williams. Is it not correct?
Yeah, Venus.
Venus Williams.
She was at the
going to be on
Bears
the
game,
show.
and she did a really good job kicking a
The
field
show's
goal.
called Game On CBS.
Venus tags that guy. Who's that? Zeke?
Oh,
no,
Gronk.
I'll be out. I know him. That's Gronk.
There's
Go ahead
Gronk.
on, Gronk.
He says he can't say he would never not come back.
Tom Brady looking for you.
That's what I mean.
There's
James.
Corden.
Okay, get it, James.
James
Okay.
Corden
Where's
is the
your
producer
card, James?
And
of
back to
this
Gronk.
Game On show. There's Gronk.
Like, who has
Gronk
more
was
fun
really-
than that?
That's what I was going
right?
to say. Gronk is really enjoying life and has always enjoyed life. I mean,
Now, this is from
you like to
NBA
see
TV
him on the field, but
last night.
definitely
That's Isaiah Thomas. And here's a little extra focus on Gronk. There's a lot more clips out there, and I almost put a few more in, but I think this is probably enough. And I think we have a couple of photos here of James Corden. There he is. Yikes, right? And there's Gronk. And, of course, we got to have the other fat guy in there. And there's the show, Game On. And it's hosted by Keegan-Michael Key. And it is a remake of this sports-themed game show that involves teams. It's called A League of Their Own. And it's a UK-based, like everything. We've got to copy it, right? Of course. James Corden is the host of that. And so he is the producer of this Game On show, which will involve, I guess, in the first episode, Rob Gronkowski as a member of a team that's going to be competing as part of this sports-themed game show. And that's why you had him out there. I guess they were filming that as part of the show. I'm not so sure that was just a promotion. I think if it was a promotion, there would have actually been some coherent promoting of the show. I mean, as I'm looking at the clips of Rob Gronkowski, and you'll probably see them around the country, wherever you may be on your local news, sports, whatever it is, or you'll see it on the national television broadcasts and digital and whatnot, streaming like here. Unlike all of those, displays of Rob Gronkowski out there as a Laker girl, we're actually going to tell you why he's there, what he's actually doing. That's what this show is. That's what we do. I'm not saying everybody's like that, but that pretty much sums it up. I mean, we talked about this yesterday ad nauseum, and I almost brought this up to Andrew, but just the fact that we were discussing Mitch Trubisky as if in the context of he wasn't really hurt, that the Bears faked that whole thing, right? And that's the way it was portrayed. That was the basis of the whole discussion of the Rams and the Bears game, and then trying to foment some sort of front office conflict between the general manager and the head coach, Matt Nagy, of the Bears. Well, it doesn't exist because Mitch Trubisky was hurt legitimately, and we showed you the play where he got hurt. And now that's died down, that discussion and conversation. But nobody, except for here, I think we're the only ones, Cam, who have acknowledged that. So we're going to talk to Chad Finn of the Boston Globe about the Rob Gronkowski thing. And by the way, originally we were going to have Adam McClintock, the college football professor, on Twitter. We were going to have him on to talk about the college football playoff rankings, which came out yesterday. No surprises there. But I definitely want to get into that before the end of the week and as we go forward, because the Alabama thing is really going to be interesting. Really interesting. And I'm a little excited about it, actually, because it's triggered me in this situation that Alabama, with Mac Jones at quarterback, nothing against Mac Jones, but could actually end up in the college football playoff ahead of Oklahoma or Utah or Oregon. We're going to have to bring Tim Brando back, of course, but I want to get somebody who's really good with the numbers, really good with the analysis and the analytics, and Adam McClintock's probably the best. Now, come to find out, he's got an iPhone 2, or was it 4? Something like that. Now, I shouldn't say that. I had an iPhone 6S for a long time, and I probably still have it. You're probably like me. You're not excited a lot of times about upgrading your iPhone and your iOS operating system. The iPhone 6S. I mean, they're still selling those suckers at Best Buy, but apparently Adam McClintock had an old phone, and so we're going to work with him on that and get him up to speed. I just want you to know you can come on the show via computer as well if you have. It was an iPhone 4 Plus, right? Get with the program. I mean, literally, there's no, put it this way. This is just reality. There's no app that works with an iPhone 4. Any app. And I mean any app that works with an iPhone 4. If it does, it really doesn't. So that's the way it works. And that's the way Apple sets it up. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I feel very strongly about the operating system upgrades and all the other stuff. And so we'll have Adam on. I want to get him on at some point. We'll just get that set up and get it rolling. before too long so we can kind of get a breakdown of the college football playoffs from an analytics perspective. I definitely and what I like about Adam, if you go to his Twitter, it's CFB underscore professor, CFB underscore professor, Adam McClintock. He intersects analytics with the pragmatic reality of the College Football Playoff Ranking Committee and really lays it out for you in specifics, which to me is the number one oversight, is that nobody looks at who's on the committee. At least they don't look at it enough. They don't name those. I mean, we should have. Listen, let me just tell you. When these rankings come out every week, the people who are voting on those rankings in that room should be releasing them on camera. Period. But they don't, and they don't for a reason. Because they're hiding. We know who they are on a sheet of paper. Maybe they take a group photo once a year. But they're hiding. They're not accountable. They're not responsible. They should be. And their schools, because the impropriety of it all, that you have athletic directors, that you have Rob Mullins right now, University of Oregon, but Gene Smith, Ohio State. There's been a lot of examples, of course, of people who are running the committee who represent certain schools. It's absurd that they do it that way. It's reminiscent of the BCS in that the BCS was this hidden formula. Why is it hidden? Why don't we know what that formula is? What's the reason? I mean, seriously, how can that not be open source, the BCS formula? It wasn't. I remember it well. I was doing talk shows with Kirk Herbstreit at the time, talking about it when it first came out. So, and so in that way, you need to have similar transparency, just like with referees officiating on the field, on the court. We should know who these people are, especially when it comes to the NFL, based on what's going on right now. It's a little absurd that we don't know who these people are at all, that they're these anonymous people. Why? Look, if they can't handle that publicity, I'm sure there are people out there who can do the job similarly as officials who can handle such publicity, right? All right. That's just one more reason not to be transparent. And you would think with all the gambling stuff now, we would have that, but we don't. We don't. And look, I understand there's other reasons why you don't make a practice of publicizing who the officials are. But let me just tell you, Bill Belichick makes a practice of knowing who they are. Bill Belichick and every NFL coach and every member of his staff knows, and in college, and talks to those officials on the phone during the week, builds off-field relationships with those officials. They absolutely do. And take those officials into account in game planning. You can bet that they do. If they don't, they're not doing their job. They're not a winning coach. So you would think if that's being accounted for with the coaching staff, that we would talk more about it. We don't talk about it at all. Not at all. And, when it comes to propriety, let me just say this it's a little bit like the NBA. Baseball's different to a certain extent because now we have the electronic monitoring of the strike zone, which is really amazing. But, and I think it really, really is phenomenal how good the umpires are. It's freaking amazing. I don't know about you, but I still marvel at that. But when you think about, it's the NBA, but the NFL particularly, right? And the nature of a holding penalty is so outrageously, ridiculously, absurdly subjective. Every play, you could throw a flag. We've seen it, That's why if you have people who know who they are, right? if they know that, I think that they're much more likely to do a good job, to try to be objective as possible, to not be sloppy if they're accountable. You know, at the very least, what's the rating system? How do we determine assignments? How do we determine postseason? So that all goes back to what we were talking about initially in this discussion, the college football playoff rankings. There's got to be some accountability if you've got Alabama sitting there and you've got Oklahoma and Oregon and Utah in a position where there's no way those teams can move up. No chance. If Alabama blows out Auburn and Georgia loses to LSU, I mean, it's unacceptable. But, you know, that's the way college football has always been. And it's also a function of the media not talking about this. Tim Brando and I wish Tim was here right now, and we'll continue that discussion with him. But this discussion, it happens to a certain extent on Sirius XM. It happens to a certain extent on SEC Network, some of these network shows, to an extent. But this should be a national conversation because college football is national. It's wall to wall, border to border, right? Every Saturday. It's not a regional sport, except when it wants to be. And the powers that be, not so much want it to be regional, they want it to be controllable under their thumb. That's the way it's always been, at least since the college football conferences took over college football in the mid-'80s when they sued the NCAA for control over the money spigot, television rights. Ever since then, this is the last thing, and I want to move on to. We're going to have Chad Finn coming up here shortly from the Boston Globe, sports media guy, and we're going to look at a clip or two here as well. I want to look at this Howard Bryant stuff in a second on ESPN from yesterday. If you missed it, but the when it comes to college football, just remember this, right? You can't tell me who runs it. You can't. You can't tell me who runs it. Who runs college football? Who makes the big decisions? Who decides, this playoff format? Who decides who's on the committee? Who decides where the games are going to be held, right? And why? Who are those people? What do they get out of it? You can't answer any of those questions. And I'm not saying that we all know why the Super Bowls end up where they end up, but at least we know the process to make it happen, for that to play out. College football is the most opaque situation in high-profile sports, and it's the second biggest commercial spectator sport in the United States after the NFL. It's above Major League Baseball and the NBA, and college basketball. It makes more money. College football. And you can't tell me who runs anything. Who's responsible for changing the rules? How's that work? Right? At least we have a clue with the NFL. So just that we don't know anything about anything, that's where the conversation starts before we're even talking about how the playoffs work. So we're going to have Chad Finn here coming up. Is he up on the line, Cam, or can I work in this one short clip number one of Howard Bryant? Whatever you want to do. Yeah, let's run this clip. This is Howard Bryant, celebrated best-selling author, on First Take last night, talking about yesterday on First Take on ESPN, talking about Colin Kaepernick. Go ahead, Cam.
So we have characters. I'm wrong about that. All I'm going to say about this is you cover basketball. You made your bones playing basketball, covering basketball. My question on all of this is, why is it so important to break this man? Why is it so? We have characters all over sport. You and I we're the same age. We remember Jim McMahon wearing a Pete Rozelle bandana on his head during games. So therefore, why is it so important to break him? If you are breaking him, If you can't handle characters, Dennis Rodman's in the Hall of Fame as a character. What you're really saying is we can handle everything in sport. We can handle the black violence that we forgive. But what we will not forgive is black advocacy. What we want is black obedience. And if that's the case, then what you really should do with this entire farce is to come out and say, look, we do not believe that our fan base is going to appreciate, or we can't handle the risk of having him support the black cause.
Boy, Howard Bryant should really be on. Remember, Cam, we were talking, Cam Smith, my producer today here on Fancred, Sports by Brooks on Fancred. We're live weekdays, Monday through Friday. Coming up, we're going to be visiting with the voice of the Patriots, Bob Sochi, and Chad Finn of the Boston Globe. All things Boston right now, right? But, well, it's the center of the sports universe. When you look at Gronk, you look at AB, you look at Brady, that's what we're all talking about. And that's why we want to go out to Boston and talk to a man who has his finger on the pulse, if anybody does. Someone who I've really enjoyed on other podcasts out there and who is a fixture in New England in the sports media marketplace, and that is Chad Finn. So you can bring up Chad, if you will. How are you, Chad?
I'm good, Brooks. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Boy, that is a cool office.
It's a dark office right now.
Yeah, that is really neat.
I'm sequestered here in the house. That's where my family keeps me.
You're a shut-in, right?
Yeah, you know how it is, sports writers.
So, what's the story with Gronk? Can you help me with this story? What's going on with that guy? I mean, and what is the reaction to all of the shenanigans in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I think yesterday was third down and out. You know, there have been a couple instances this year where he's teased that I've got a big announcement, I might be coming back, is the implication. He doesn't flat out say that, but it's to draw attention to CBD oil, which he's promoting, to gig with Fox Sports on the pregame show, NFL pregame show. This or that, whatever he's got going on, his beach party in Miami, Super Bowl weekend now. So he's kind of milked the possibility and sort of Patriots fans' desperation at this point to have him come back to get attention for the various things that he's doing that have nothing to do with football. I happen to think there's still a decent chance he plays if the NFL ever approves the use of CBD oil. So if he can manage his pain that he's dealt with, it wouldn't shock me if he's playing tight end for the Patriots next year. But that's out of the question this season for sure. He still likes to tease that, though.
Boy, and I wasn't aware of that. I want to drill down. So the CBD oil is effective to the extent that it would allow him to come back. Has he indicated that, or is that your your read on the situation?
Yeah, he has. I think this was strike one where his first big announcement that he was going to his first big announcement that he had a big announcement and that indicated or suggested or hinted that he might think about playing football again. It was actually something talking about CBD oil, his investment in that and his belief in it. And he got teary talking about how beat up he was at the end of last season. Had this huge welt on his quad after the Super Bowl. It's just grotesque, and all the things he's dealt with through the years and how this has helped him. And it's very sincere. It really does seem to have had a positive effect on his mindset. And if he does come back to play football again, if he feels up to that again, this is going to have to be something that he's allowed to do as a player. So I think that's the waiting game we're playing with him as he does these dances with Laker girls and all these other things that he's doing in his life.
Well, the problem is even when he's talking about CBD in the context of coming back, that's the problem because he's promoting CBD oil. He's trying to make money with this business. So you just don't know where he's coming from. And I'm not so sure he really does. I mean, are there other factors going on in the background? Maybe his family, his father that could be impacting and influencing what he's doing?
I don't know. I mean, his dad's very involved. His whole family is close. His brothers and him, his parents are divorced, but the father is basically a brother. It's all this big group. They come to Patriots games together in this huge van and set up their little party shop outside. So it's all for one in that family, and I'm sure the dad has some influence. But Gronk seems like he's in a really good place right now. He's got a lot going on with this stuff. The Fox thing's actually gone pretty well. He's really good at, we didn't know this, at talking about and dissecting football. He's not the most articulate guy, but he's charismatic and he really knows his stuff. You can see how he thrived playing with Tom Brady or so demanding, or playing for Bill Belichick. He knows the game and he's doing a good job of getting that across. So that's going pretty well for him. I think the question, Brooks, comes when maybe he doesn't have a lot going on. Maybe he gets bored with TV. Maybe there's no more beach party to have, and he's 31, 32 years old and says, you know what, I want to give this one more shot. I miss being out there with my guys. And I think that's still a pretty realistic possibility.
Visiting with Chad Finn. He is a sports media columnist for the Boston Globe and Boston.com. And I want to talk to you now about Tom Brady. And, you know, I've talked to some people in New England, and we've had some people on the show. And, you know, when Brady said what he said, and he didn't say much, and of course, subsequently to Jim Gray as well in an interview with Westwood One, in regards to their last game, I really didn't take it all that serious. I really didn't even notice because, you know, I'm not watching it with a fine-tuned comb the way people in New England and Boston would. But, you know, in the context of the 9-1 record, is this kind of a new charted territory for Tom Brady, that we really haven't seen this sort of thing from him before, in the context of, well, the team's doing 9-1?
Yeah, it's a little different because Brady has sort of these standard lines that he's always said. And it begins with we, always with him. We need to play better. We need to do a better job of getting the ball into the end zone, in the red zone, that sort of stuff. And the other day was a little bit of a different path from that, because he had the chance. He does a paid hit on a morning show here. He's been doing for about pretty much the entirety of his career, every Monday or Tuesday morning. And it's, you know, it's kind of a softball thing for the most part, but they do ask him tough questions, and every once in a while he actually answers them. And he didn't back down from that this week. He was given the chance to say, well, I was just frustrated with my own performance, and that's why I came out that way. And then he didn't take it. He didn't take that opportunity to put it on him. He almost emphasized that he's still frustrated with what's around him. And you look at it, he's 42 years old. He doesn't have a contract for next season. He's running for his life to the right as soon as he takes the snap, because the left tackle can't block anybody. Their fullback, who was instrumental in helping them change their offense in the postseason last year to becoming a running team, is out for the year. Their center is out for the year. Gronkowski's off doing his stuff. And so Brady's here with kind of a group that's not as good as he's used to having, and he's got some receivers who still don't really know what they're doing. He's still ticked off that they didn't keep Antonio Brown. I think that's pretty evident. And it all adds up to a guy who says, is saying indirectly, but he's saying it, listen, these guys need to be better if we're going to get where I want to go and win this 7th Super Bowl before I retire or leave the Patriots or whatever comes next.
What are your thoughts on the timing and, you know, the extraordinary message from AB yesterday? Any chance that could, I mean, the conspiracy theorists are out, I'm sure, up in Boston, but is there any chance that could be connected, the AB thing? And my thought is, it was such the semicolon, right, in the tweet. It was such a different thing from AB, and we know the relationship is there with Brady. Is there any way that could be related, you think, even if it's just being projected maybe by Drew Rosenhaus?
Do you think AB typed that out himself, or Drew Rosenhaus dictated it to him? I mean, it was a little bit different tone than we're used to from AB on Instagram, for sure.
Just like Tom, though. I mean, Chad, just like Tom, it was a different tone. That's why I'm saying there might be something to it.
I mean, nobody has any evidence of anything on this because the Patriots aren't going to let it out. But I just based on Brady's public persona and response to them letting Brown go, and the fact that he likes everything Antonio Brown puts on Instagram, I think he's probably still pitching for them to bring him back. And if AB comes out and says publicly, I'm really sorry, Mr. Kraft, and Kraft loves being called Mr., just like every owner in the NFL. If he comes out and does that, maybe that increases that chance from 0% to 10% that the Patriots might consider bringing him back. And if they get wind that Kansas City or the Colts or the Ravens or some team that is going to be a real challenge for them in the playoffs is considering bringing this guy in, he was dynamic in his 11 days here. They know it. They might give it a second shot here and say, if he can just behave for 6 or 8 weeks, maybe we can get through this and he can help us win that 7th Lombardi trophy.
Visiting with Chad Finn. He is a sports media columnist for Boston.com and the Boston Globe. Let's look at the Celtics for a second. Kyrie gone, Kemba here. Team's not that different. Oh, but it is in the standings. I mean, what's your observation of what's gone on so far with the Celtics?
It's weird what happens in basketball when you actually, I guess sports in general, when you actually like who you're playing with.
Right.
Kyrie didn't get enough grief for what he did that last year. If people went back and watched the final game of the Patriots' second-round playoff series against the Bucks, I've never seen a player quit like that. He was switching onto Giannis, 6'2" Kyrie, whatever he is, switching onto Giannis, calling his teammate off, and then not guarding him. It was absurd, and I wrote that. I think that was the lead to my column the next day. Was Kyrie Irving quit on the Celtics or something along those lines? And people feel that way about him, but he should have got buried more than he did for that. And you bring in Kemba, who is kind of this kumbaya kind of guy, just a really upbeat personality. We saw it when a week or two ago, the Celtics went down to Charlotte, where Kemba spent the first 8 years of his career, and he knew everybody, and everybody was happy to see him. The ushers came up and hugged him after the game. Play-by-play guy, everybody, and he's on a first-name basis. That's about 179 degrees from what Kyrie Irving was in his couple of seasons with the Celtics. And I'm telling you now, I've written this, I've said this, it's going to be a disaster in Brooklyn with this guy and Kevin Durant, because Kyrie wants to be the man. He's the man right now. It's going to be okay for a while. Durant comes back. He's not the same because he's coming off an Achilles injury. Nobody's ever the same after that. He's still the man. Kyrie has to play second fiddle to a guy who slipped a little bit. It's going to be a mess. We saw it here in Boston. He's not capable of being the number one guy in the team because he's not a leader. He's envious of guys who are, like Al Horford. It's just going to follow him his whole career, and it's too bad because he's an incredible player to watch, but he's just somebody who's detrimental to winning unless he's playing with somebody like LeBron James who can just overcome it with his ability.
You're taking the plunge with your prediction on the Nets. Now let me take the plunge and get your thoughts on the Celtics. I mean, the Celtics, when Hayward comes back, what he looked like earlier, how the team's playing, the whole chemistry issue. This team looks like it really could be primed for a finals run. I mean, what are your thoughts on the Celtics?
They're better than we thought they were going to be, but for a couple of reasons. Guys have improved. Jaylen Brown is a noticeably better player this year. Better passer, better ball handler, two areas of his game he really needed to work on. He's worked on them. Jason Tatum worked out with Kobe Bryant 2 years ago and picked up the age 36 Kobe habits, not the age 23 Kobe habits. That was a problem last year, taking long two after long two. He got that out of his game. He's better this year. He's a much better player. These guys aren't worrying that if they make a mistake, Kyrie's going to yell at them, which he did to everybody. Kemba is the kind of guy who he's sort of in the flow for the first couple quarters, and you look up and he's got 25 points in the fourth and hits a couple big shots late, but he's not taking issue with other guys taking shots, which is another plus. And then the big one is Gordon Hayward again. He's the guy. It seems like he's about 99% of the player who in his last season in Utah was spectacular in a playoff series against the Warriors. They didn't win, of course, but he was very good in that series. 5 minutes into his Celtics career, he snaps his leg. We never got to see that guy. He is back to being as close to that guy as you can get. And before he had the finger injury, they were running their offense through him, and it was pretty spectacular to watch because you never knew if he was going to get back there again, and he is. So this is a really good team. They need help inside, but they're going to be one of the three best teams in the East, I think, for sure.
Yep, looking forward to it. And I think it really, the stars may be aligning for the Celtics when you look at some of the issues with the Sixers and the Bucks. I mean, we'll have to see. But visiting with Chad Finn of the Boston Globe, Boston.com sports media columnist. This is Sports by Brooks on Fancred, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern time. We do it every weekday here on Fancred. Let's now talk a little national, if we will, national sports media. What has been your initial reaction to the Colin Kaepernick coverage that it's been going on now for a few days. What are your thoughts on how it's being covered nationally?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's mind was changed. You know, everybody's so divided on it where nobody really looks at it with a lot of nuance. They either say the NFL is blackballing him and they're trying to run out the clock, where you get to a point where they can say, well, he hasn't played in 4 years, so he can't come back and help. Or people look at it and say, well, you know, he's disruptive to a team and he demands to start, and all these things we aren't even sure are true. So you look at this, it was a debacle from both sides. I don't think Kaepernick handled it especially well. He gave teams a little bit of cause with the way he handled that, to think it would be a disruption. The NFL handled it horribly, just like they do with everything else. It was clear it was a sham. The contract they tried to get him to sign, taking away some of his rights. So I don't know. I don't think anything good came out of it, other than the fact we realized that he can still throw a deep ball to a wide open receiver 60 yards downfield.
So I've seen you mention this in print before, and this is kind of off the board question, but a contemplative, abstract question. But the fact that, and I'm someone who does this, that fans a lot of times will side with ownership. For instance, when you don't have a salary cap in baseball, who gives a damn if your owner is saving money? That whole principle, right? They'll figure their way around the salary cap with the Dallas Cowboys. Just make it. Why is it that we're so concerned with the owners and we side with the owners? What goes into that psychology, that pathology? And do you think the sports media plays a significant role in that? And if it does, is it tied to the fact that so much of sports media is tied to the live game broadcast rights business model?
I think that's part of it. I think the bigger part, Brooks, is people just look at the numbers players get paid and they can't fathom it. You look and say,
envy. Is it envy?
Yeah, it is. And there's this kind of lousy sense that you should be happy to be making that kind of money. Like, Mookie Betts for the Red Sox going into his free agent season. He's going to make probably $28 million in arbitration this year. That I can't grasp that kind of money. Nobody who's paying $7.25 for a bottle of water at Fenway Park and $60 for parking can fathom making that kind of money. And they look at his salary and say, he just turned down $200 million to sign with the Red Sox. Well, get this guy out of here. We don't have to pay him that. And the reality is the money's going someplace. That ballpark's banged out with $37,000 every night. And where's that money going? It's going to the ownership. And for some reason, maybe it's because you don't see exactly what's in their books and how much money they make, whereas we do see it with the player salaries. Maybe that's part of it, but I don't get it, especially as a fan who idealistically you want them to have the best players on their team. And the Red Sox are selling this bit to their fans right now that they can't afford to pay Mookie Betts because they're trying to get under that $208 million luxury tax threshold. Yeah. And so, well, we've got $213 million in bad pitching. So, Sieta, the guy's probably been the second best player in baseball the last couple of years. So I don't get why fans buy it. I think they need to think a little bit deeper on it. And we in the media are probably responsible for helping them see a little bit beyond just those numbers.
Do you think the sports radio talk shows out there that seem to play on that, this guy's making this amount of money sort of thing, it foments that sort of reaction from fans? Builds that conflict?
What number do you put on the percentage of people who call sports radio and actually side with the players on anything? It's probably like 1%.
Amazing.
Say, well, pay Mookie Betts $35 million a year because he's Mookie Betts, or Tom Brady's contract's up. Boy, if he gets $50 million next year, people are going to be mad about that for one more year of Tom Brady. There probably would be some. So I just think that you have to remind them to take a step back and see how much money is in the sport, how much money Major League Baseball regional cable networks are making. We talk about it being a dying sport, but NESN here prints money. Regional cable networks all over the place print money. You look at the NFL and the rights deals there, they're ridiculous. And so you need to make an effort to think about the oodles of money that the teams are making, and that they are more than in position to be able to pay for their best players.
One more thing, Chad. Chad Finn joins us from the Boston Globe, Boston.com sports media columnist. What's your thoughts about Mookie Betts, that situation, the odds that he's going to be traded, he's going to be moving on, and what does that represent to the Red Sox if that's going to happen? What should the Red Sox do in this situation?
Yeah, they should just pay him. He's Mookie Betts. He's been a top 6 finalist. Yeah, 5-tool player. Wonderful guy, great guy in the community. After a playoff game last year, he went out and served homeless people sleeping on the steps of the library. He's just a really good guy. And He's not even 27 yet. He hasn't even had his age 27 season. The best could still be ahead of him. He's the kind of guy you pay. I mean, if you look at his career numbers, he's had 5 seasons better than Bryce Harper's best season, something like that. It's pretty close. It's just, he's a wonderful player, and yet they're setting up to trade him. I think they will. When JD Martinez decided not to opt out of his contract, the Red Sox said the next day, this doesn't change anything about what our plans are with the salary structure and getting under that threshold. So he's probably going to be traded off. I'd put it at probably 75% that he's traded off this winter for, 60 cents on the dollar, a couple prospects, maybe a cheap pitcher to help out the back of the rotation. And right now, looks to me, Brooks, like fans are ready to swallow that.
Yeah, it's an amazing situation, especially from an outsider's perspective, to see that. I mean, this guy is such a fun. I mean, there's so many elements to his career as a player, what he represents. Yeah, that it's hard to fathom. I really don't get it. I guess you have to live there to really understand. I just don't understand why there's not a groundswell. Maybe in the context of the season they just had, why there wouldn't be a groundswell to keep him. Yeah,
I'm trying to bang that drum. I don't know if people are picketing outside of Fenway.
Right.
I'm working on it. But yeah, that's the way it should be. The other thing is, too, I think people, fantasy sports comes to it where everybody's a general manager nowadays. Everybody says, well, and everybody knows who all the prospects are before 2 or 3 or 4 years before they even hit the major leagues. So you can look at Mookie Betts and you can open up Baseball America and say, well, maybe you can get these 3 guys from the Braves for him, and then we've rebuilt. The Boston Red Sox had the highest payroll in baseball this year. They won the World Series 2 years ago. You have Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers, really good players locked up. Keep the best guy you have, and there's no need to reload or rebuild. We'd be making fun of the Yankees if they were shopping Aaron Judge to get under the luxury tax threshold. But for some reason, it's not registering here like it should.
I'm an old sports radio guy, and hopefully we can have you on again, because I want to keep you all day. But I do want to get into what's going on with Sports Hub and WEEI in the future. I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. Thank you so much, Chad. That's been awesome.
Anytime, pal. Glad to come on.
That's Chad Finn, Boston Globe sports media columnist, also with Boston.com. And boy, that's great stuff right there, Chad Finn. But, I don't want to wear out my welcome, right? First time he's on the show, and a lot of great insight into what's going on in that marketplace. Boy, a lot happening. Mookie Betts, we haven't even talked about that. It's pretty extraordinary. And I can remember listening to conversation. I listen to Boston Sports Radio here and there, just listening to the conversation about it, and national hosts talking about Mookie Betts and thinking, this is like this guy is a different kind of a player in what he represents off the field, but also on the field. This is just my thought process, where we are in general. If you think about baseball and what they're trying to do, they're trying to, the sport's always trying to get more popular. As boring as this. I mean, this is a guy that connects right now as well as any guy you would think to the generation of fans, future generations that baseball wants to appeal to. What's happening? It's being treated like it's anything, like it's a typical. It's not a typical situation, in my opinion. It's different. So now we're going to go back out to New England, and we're going to be visiting with. You can bring him up, Cam Smith, our producer, Bob Sochi, who is the radio play-by-play voice of the New England Patriots, and the Patriots right now. And Boston in general, it's kind of the epicenter of the national sports conversation. It really is, Bob. And thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Brooks. Let me just try to make sure that my camera is focused here and at least has this mug centered somewhat. But it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor and privilege to follow the great Chad Finn.
Yeah, right. And we are covering all things New England. And by the way, you look great. So where are you right now?
I'm at Gillette Stadium. There's a television studio here. It's part of the Kraft Sports Productions Company, and it's where Bill Belichick, for example, records his segment that you might see online on Patriots.com and on the Patriots All Access show, The Bellustrators. So it's being unused right now, and I thought it was a good, quiet place to chat with you. And maybe a little good background as well.
So it's been a little bit weird the last 48, 72 hours with the Patriots in that they're 9-1, but the narrative somehow hasn't been as positive. I mean, any team, if the Browns were 9-1, oh my God, but they're 9-1, yet it doesn't seem like a 9-1 feel. And I know it has something to do with Tom Brady. What's your thought on that situation? And what is the thought process up in New England and Boston?
Yeah, well, that's the case this week. It's related largely to Tom Brady's demeanor, his comportment after the game on Sunday with Philadelphia, the victory over Philadelphia, and his displeasure right now, the state of the offense in that particular performance, and as well some subsequent interviews, whether locally or nationally, with Jim Gray and Westwood One. But as you may know from tuning into Boston sports radio here and there, even over the course of my 7 seasons covering the Patriots, having called 6 AFC championships and 4 Super Bowls, it seems like every year the narratives and the names are pretty much the same. Some of the details change, but the narrative often has the same tenor and tone. And in this case, a lot of concerns about the offense. Certainly a lot of optimism about the defense. There are other factors as well. Brady being in what realistically is the last year of his contract. He's got the 2 years after this in paper, but again, they'll be voided. Can't franchise tag him. A lot of questions about his future at 42, the plans of the franchise moving forward, whether he wants to continue to play truly as he's articulated, and whether the team has him in the fold going past this year. And as I mentioned, the Philadelphia game, it was a poor offensive performance in a lot of regards. 1 for 3 in the red zone, Brooks. It's been a consistent problem for this team. The team had 2 possessions that started near midfield, and those were 2 that Brady particularly seemed upset about in the interview with Jim Gray, because he talked about not getting any points out of possessions like that. He's dissatisfied with the offense. That's Tom Brady. The standard is always extremely high. He expects near perfection of himself and the team. Right now, you're not getting that out of this offense, and they have personnel issues, whether due to injury or simply turnover at positions from the offseason to this season. And I think a lot of people are just displeased with the way, or so they sense the pleasure that he's shown with his demeanor and in interviews throughout the season. That I think it's given a longer life to this narrative all year, but especially has amplified it this week.
Visiting with Bob Sochi, he's the radio play-by-play voice of the New England Patriots. Let's talk about the offensive line, which is a big part of the situation that we've just been talking about. You've been referencing, and Isaiah Wynn coming back at the left tackle position. Can you characterize what kind of impact that represents? What's the ceiling on that impact? Well,
it should have a big impact, and I think one of the big factors in the Philadelphia game, you'll hear people often say, what's the key to getting to Brady? And they'll say, you got to hit him early, move him off his spot, make him uneasy. And I think from the start in Philadelphia, this is not to excuse a lot of errant throws and some missed reads, not seeing open receivers, but along with the conditions in Philadelphia, which were not conducive for either quarterback to have an efficient day, you could see from the outset that there were concerns about the left tackle position for the Pats, and it's been a case all year since Isaiah Wynn went down to injury, their first-round pick from last year. Marshall Newhouse, veteran guy, he's a journeyman. He's done his best, but clearly it was in the game plan. You could see design rollouts for Tom Brady, a sprint out in the red zone more than once, and with Newhouse at left tackle. With the loss of David Andrews, the center, and I think it's a real key, especially when they go on the road. And you need a center that takes command, makes the right line calls, gets everybody on the same page. Andrews did that brilliantly last year, best evidenced by the performance of that offensive line in the AFC Championship game at Kansas City. Well, he's been gone all year. It certainly has been a running attack for the Patriots that's been drastic.
What about Shaq Mason? What about his status, Shaq Mason?
Yeah, Mason hasn't had the kind of season that we expect of him. Certainly it pales in comparison to the others he's enjoyed, especially last year. I think that Marcus Cannon has had some issues at right tackle after playing well a year ago. So it's really all 5 for the most part, but I think most people point to the left tackle. And on top of that, Brooks, there's no Rob Gronkowski. There's no Dwayne Allen at tight end. Good blockers. And in the case of Gronk, a massive force. There's no James Devlin, who was really, I think, a key to that running game last year at the fullback position. So they're a team with wide receivers that haven't been able to get much separation. You don't have a lot of speed at that position. And so you're finding Tom Brady with limited weapons now under constant duress as he was with Philadelphia.
What are the prospects of Antonio Brown coming back to the Patriots at this time? And what are your thoughts in general? I know it's a circus, but I will say this. That message was a lot more pragmatic, calculated, pointed, semicolon, right? But it was a different demeanor from him. So, but just characterize what you're thinking on that situation and what the thinking is up there.
Well, my first thought was, because of the way you just described that message, somebody else finally got a hold of Antonio Brown's phone.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Look. I never thought, honestly, that he was going to be here in the first place. I knew the state of the Patriots with the wide receiver position, but I just thought with what transpired in Oakland, and as well what we had seen from him in his actions.
You and everybody else, Bob.
Yeah. So I'm going to sit here and say today that I don't expect, that apology as much as Tom Brady and some of his teammates liked it yesterday on Instagram and Twitter. I don't expect him being back here, but especially with the Patriots, you can't be totally surprised by anything.
Yeah, especially I think under the current circumstances, which are somewhat extraordinary based on the tone of Tom Brady, because that is kind of, would you call that his tone in relation to the 91 record, somewhat of an unprecedented thing? Or as you mentioned before, he's been a little different this year. So maybe Sunday wasn't all that different, or the way he's been since the game.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that he's been different in that we've seen it. He's shown it more often. There've been some other interviews too earlier in the year where you could sense that there was a displeasure, and I think there was a lot of reporting too, whether it was with regards to Antonio Brown, and it goes back to what Al Michaels said on the pregame show when Brown was signed by the Patriots, or was going to be signed officially, I think the week before his debut, how much Tom Brady wanted him, how much he was in on the decision to sign Antonio Brown. And so I think a lot of people sensed that Brady was very unhappy, and probably rightfully so. I can't say that with 100% certainty, but those were my feelings as well. Unhappy with the state of the receiver position. And there've been concerns again going back to the preseason. Clearly, they missed out on some guys they wanted. Adam Humphries, a couple of other free agents that were out there. They brought in people like Mo Harris from the Redskins, who didn't make the team. Dontrell Inman really didn't even get on the field for much of training camp with Tom Brady and the first team offense. So it's been a lingering issue, I think, on top of the contract situation, plus the age and the questions about his longevity moving forward. But I also know too, Brooks, that Brady's a fighter on the field. And a lot of people wanted to hear Tom Brady say Sunday after the game that I can play better. A lot of people wanted to hear him say that in his interview Monday on local radio, competing station of ours. I need to play better. It starts with me. He didn't say those things. He used we rather than I. But Brady's always held himself accountable where it counts most, on the field, in the meeting rooms. He was at the facility during a day off on Monday. Not atypical for him. My expectation is, because we've seen him, quote unquote, sulk in the past or be very short at the podium even after a win. Not to this extent, but my expectation, he's going to come out as he usually does, and he's going to look to improve today on the practice field. And I wouldn't be surprised, as good as Dallas is in terms of its personnel and talent, if we see Tom Brady play exceptionally well on Sunday. I
was just going to ask you about that, visiting with Bob Sochi, the radio play-by-play voice of the New England Patriots. Man, I don't know about you, but I'm pumped for this game. And so tell me, what do the Patriots have to be worried about when it comes to the Cowboys?
Well, it's going to be a real test for the Patriots defense. Different in a sense from Baltimore, that with the Ravens, you had this unique offense, and you had a player like Lamar Jackson who you can't simulate in preparation. You talk about the speed of what to do. And you try to mimic it on the practice field. But with the three tight ends, with Jackson as dynamic as he is, Ingram, and the job Greg Roman did in that game, I think that was a matter of Baltimore playing so well, but also the nature of the matchup. This is a different kind of game for this Patriots defense. This is, I think, a test of, the test that we've been waiting for all year for this defense, because the Cowboys have not only Amari Cooper, but Randall Cobb, Gallup, Those two guys are coming off 100-yard days. Prescott's having far and away his best season, and especially on third down, over 50% on third down. And then you look at the offensive line and the two backs that they have, and the Patriots have not been overall a good run defense this year. Yep. So, so you've got Elliott running behind that offensive line, but you also have this quarterback who's passed for over 3,200 yards, playing exceptionally well, and that variety of receivers in different ways to try to beat a defense. I think also you look at the Dallas front defensively. We're talking about Patriots offensive lineman, left tackle Isaiah Wynn. What kind of a difference does he make? Well, he's going to need to make one this week against Robert Quinn and or DeMarcus Lawrence.
Right. I'm really going to be fascinated to see what the Cowboys do offensively, because Zeke Elliott obviously hasn't had the year they had hoped he would have. Dak Prescott has become a transcendent. He's ascending right now into that transcendent space as a quarterback. But is it possible that the Pats' Achilles heel could be up front? And is it possible that Zeke Elliott could break out in this game?
Oh, absolutely. You look at Philadelphia, and they ran the ball well the first couple of series. They also did it without Jordan Howard. The Patriots struggled against Frank Gore, downhill running. They struggled against Nick Chubb, one cut downhill running. They struggled against the Ravens with that offense. Again, different running attack, but still Baltimore hit them fast, and they had a lot of yards with whether it was Ingram or Jackson running up the middle. Even Gus Edwards had a good game for them. So against the Cowboys, Danny Shelton has played extremely well, played a great game against Philadelphia, but against the Cowboys, it's a different animal altogether. With Elliott, I still think is the best running back in the NFL. There's arguably two or three others that are in the conversation, but I think with Elliott, whether the numbers have been down late or not, this is a game where he's priority number one. You got to stop him or control him, and that offensive line makes it difficult.
Bob, I can't thank you enough, man, for taking the time. This has really been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Fun for me, Brooks. I have to apologize again. I usually talk a lot with my right hand, more so than my left. My phone's been bouncing all over the place. I apologize.
No, man, it's been great. And that's one of the joys of what we do. It's kind of an informal conversational thing. And but thank you so much for taking the time. Got a big game coming up. Really look forward to it. I'm a play-by-play guy in the Pats. Just love hearing your voice because it just gets me going for the game. You have that presence about your voice. So have a great call on Sunday.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's been a blast covering this team, calling games, and I'm glad I could come on today. Thanks so much.
That's Bob Sochi. He is the radio play-by-play voice of the New England Patriots. And honest to God, as I'm listening to him, I'm like, he's just got the voice. You can, the highlights, and obviously he's covered the team and called the games for years. And in the context of the Super Bowls, I can't help it. I'm a fan. That's the way I am. That's fan cred, right? I mean, this is fan cred. We've got guys like Bob Sochi, who's, I just think it's a perfect name for the app, perfect name for what we do. And we bring you that kind of informal angle to it too. Today, it's just a joy to do the show because we have Andrew Siciliano in his kitchen. We always have Tim Brando when he's on with us. He's a friend of the show, regular. If you're just joining us for the first time, Sports by Brooks on Fancred, weekdays, noon Eastern. We've always got Tim Brando in his kitchen at the same kitchen table. He's got the fan lamp above him, a decorative lamp. So we know his kitchen layout now. We've got Bo Curran, Tom Curran's dog. We met Newey Scruggs' dog in Dallas. NBC 5 sports director, Newey Scruggs. We covered the Cowboys earlier this week. As we spent some time in his home. And you just never know. We were in Chad Finn's cool office where he's got all the newspaper clippings and I think it's baseball cards. We may have to get a tour next time of his home office. So it's always something different and new. You never know what you're going to get. Here's the thing. You look at a lot of shows out there and you say, oh, this guy's going to be on, this guy's going to fine. And they're going to be on and they do what they do. And we're going to talk about the games and stuff. We do that here. Obviously, we get you some of the best analysis, commentary on what's happening. A lot that you're not going to get, especially in what we're doing, me and our producer, Cam Smith. But what you're not going to get in those other situations is the kind of really relaxed, informal, conversational tone where we're hanging out with some of these national sports media personalities. Kirk Herbstreit, great example. He was lounging on his couch, in his den. He had a hat on, just chilling, man, talking ball for about half an hour here on Sports by Brooks on Fancred. So we get all manner of interactions. That's what this is all about. That's what makes it so fun. And we're going to be visiting with you. We always do visit with you, but I want to bring you guys in and interact with me more often with our fan line. You can see the logo on the screen. All you got to do is click on it. That'll bring you up onto the stage. And the gatekeeper, the guy that has the list at the door, Cam Smith, our producer, will take care of you as far as that is concerned. And speaking of kind of an informal thing, we're actually kind of showing you how the sausage is made to a certain extent. As today, Bob Sochi was basically right off stage, right next to the conference room where Bill Belichick is having his press conference right now. And we're talking to the voice of the freaking Patriots. That's pretty awesome. And yesterday, we're on with Tom Curran, one of the leading, if not the leading, Patriots insiders in New England, in Boston. We're hanging out in his living room with his dog, Bo, right, in the big leather chair. And so we're talking. All of a sudden, the news breaks about Antonio Brown. He's got to go away because his phone starts ringing. This is what happened yesterday if you weren't here. Take a call, cover the story, and then he came back. He came back, told us what, he's finding out. And so when I say you're learning how the sausage is made, that's exactly what we're doing here on Sports by Brooks on Fancred. And that really is, it has exceeded my expectation. The type of guests that we've been able to get, the nature of, the influential guests, and some of the people that maybe you haven't heard of before, where you were like, wow, that guy's amazing. RJ Young's a great example. And we're going to get him on again. In fact, we might want to get him on this week because of the way Oklahoma played on Saturday, that epic comeback. But RJ Young is a guy, hustling guy, does a talk show in Tulsa, incredible YouTube feed. So that's, when I built Sports by Brooks, I was always looking for talent. At one point, we had over a dozen writers on our editorial staff. I hired guys like Barry Pachevsky, the guy who went on to be, editor of Deadspin. You may remember who quit a few weeks ago in that massive walkout by the Deadspin staff. But we've got an eye for talent here on Sports by Brooks on Fancred. So not just the big names. Sure, we have them. We have them in a relaxed situation where we're going to get a lot of great, analysis you might not get other places. We don't have to go to a commercial, a spa. Man, I can't tell you. Let me just say, it is such a nuisance. It's a nuisance listening to national sports radio these days. The number of avails, commercials, the length of they're called stop sets in the parlance of radio programming, stop sets. That's, the commercials that are played. It's so long and so onerous at this point. And that's why it makes such sense to do a show like this where, hey, man, we're just going to bring you the content right now. That's what we do. And nothing is more credible than Fancred and Sports by Brooks on Fancred here in what we do weekdays. So earlier, and before we check out here, I do want to take a look at, we didn't get a chance, as we looked at what we had set up today, I wanted to fill you in. If you could run the, Cam Smith, our producer, we have the clip of Charles Barkley. If you haven't heard, this is one story you probably haven't heard about, and you probably aren't going to hear about it. But Barkley had an exchange with a reporter last night, and today he apologized for what he said to her. And I mentioned it earlier, and here I just wanted to show you the messages. This is Alexia McCammon from Axios.com. She's a reporter. And so this is what she tweeted last night. And now I'm going to show you my tweet. here in a second. So now you can see, and this is what I tweeted early this morning, along with a lot of other people. And what followed that was less than 90 minutes later, we get the apology from Charles Barkley. As you can see, I'm not going to read it out. You can read it yourself. It's right there. And I think on the back end of this, you can see once again, Charles Barkley, I don't hit women, but if I did, I would hit you. That's what he said to her. And when she tweeted that, dude, look, that's 12,000 likes. There's probably more than that now. There was a litany of replies. And then there is the Barkley apology. And what happened there was, obviously, I weighed in on it. And that's not a small thing when I'm, when I weigh in on certain things. There's a lot of things underneath the surface that I'm not aware of, and the influence that we have on this show. But also on my Twitter feed, on my website over the years and now. But that was one thing that I truly believe contributed to the appropriate response by Charles Barkley. But after she tweeted what he had said to her, there were probably 10 replies from other reporters who had cited other things that Charles Barkley has said, misogynistic things in relation to women in the past. And Charles Barkley is someone whose reputation has been rehabilitated like nobody's business. If you're old enough to remember, there was a time when we looked at Charles Barkley in the way we looked at Kyrie Irving. I don't think that's a stretch at all when he was playing. Charles Barkley was the eye roll guy, right? Today, he comes off more as the responsible guy to a certain extent. I think he does. I mean, he's one of the most popular guys across the board. And so he's kind of middle of the road, keep the ball in the fairway to an extent. He'll push the envelope. But he pushes the envelope in the direction of get off my lawn guy, right? And that is tremendously appealing to the older crowd, if you will, which is ironic because that older crowd remembers the way Charles was earlier in life. And this isn't to say that I don't like him. I do like him. I think he's a good guy, but in a general sense, but clearly there's a disconnect with him in this situation. And that's the good part of Twitter right there, what happened. And hopefully that will bring pause to Barkley, bring pause to him, because in the aftermath of the China situation with him particularly, he really lost me. He was all over the map on China and in siding with LeBron and then siding with the other side of the thought process on China. He sided with LeBron's ridiculous, absurd, uninformed contentions about Daryl Morey. And it was a very pragmatic, cynical stance that Barkley took for the most part. That's what 90% of where he was on China. And most concerning about that situation is that it is born, Barkley in particular, and LeBron, because they verbalized this. They said this. Most disconcerting for me was they indicated that there was no changing China. And look, I understand it's a sovereign country. It's not our business to go in and change another country necessarily. But we are talking about Hong Kong, which is a little bit different. But still, that's China. That said, when you look at inhumanity, when you look at oppression, you can't look at it that way. You can't say to yourself or to the public, there's no changing it. There's no changing it. Because where would we be today? Right here. What we're talking about. Right. If that was the case, there would be no black football players on the University of Georgia right now. Does that seem like it's overboard? That's an overboard statement. When I was 5 years old, 5 years old, there had never been a black player on the University of Georgia. Ever. When I was 5. So, and in no way is Georgia alone in that endeavor. And in no way were Southern football teams alone in doing that. There's not a college football program out there that didn't segregate or treat blacks unfairly, people of color, whatnot, right? But my point is that 5 years old, that was going on, right? And put that in the context of today's conversations that we have about everything, about society, and understand how recent that is, how recent it is. And the fact that the odds are, in fact, I know if you heard me, saw me say that a moment ago about no black players of the University of Georgia football team until I was 5 years old, right? I know you didn't know that. I know you did, because I know 99.9% of students at that school do not know, and they should. So when I talk about Charles Barkley, of all people, right? A pioneer to a certain extent in the SEC, with Auburn to a certain extent. And he's been a force for good. But when I hear him say, in the context of China, we can't do anything about it, so don't blame LeBron. You know, Daryl Morey had no right to do that. Inconsiderate, should have waited a week. Things like that. That sort of cynicism, right? That's, to me, it's un-American. Thank God that a lot of people don't think that way, clearly. So, I mean, if you had told people 6 months before LBJ was able to enact the Civil Rights Act, a Southerner, lifelong segregationist, that was going to happen. No, there was no affecting it. There's no way it was going to happen, right? It happened. And a lot more has happened since. So, I wanted to fill you in on that. Let's do one more thing. Let's play the I want to do Carmelo Anthony. What happened last night? His debut yesterday. I put the emergency flashlight thing on this. His debut with the Portland Trailblazers last night. And in case you missed it, we did a little highlight thing of him. And underneath it, you'll hear a quick little interview. Just his highlights and how well he didn't play all that great. But in case you know, what did Melo look like last night? Do you have that clip, Cam Smith, our producer, to wrap things up? Or probably blindsided him. What? Well, he's going to do that clip out of nowhere. What is he doing? But it's one of those things where you see, oh, he's back. Well, what happened? How did he play? What did he look like?
It was
right
cool.
Here he is.
I was just happy to be back out there, man. It was, playing and getting up and down the court and putting the uniform back on.
Dame, CJ, Portland, you guys got some ground to make up. What can you guys be together?
We believe that we could be good once it get going. And the good thing about this is 11, 12 games into the season, so we still have time to grow with one another. We still have time to figure it out. I'm not coming in, after All-Star break and 20 games left. We still have time.
There he is getting beat down on a dunk attempt.
Figure it
Oops.
out. And I'm sure we'll figure it out.
So these are just some clips of Melo on the post. I was just struck last night. One of the big reasons is that I wanted to show this and there's Melo struggling. That clip, by the way, as I'm watching that, it looks like it's right out of the WNBA. And here's him getting stuffed. Look at his reaction. Yeah, there it is. I stopped it right there. So that's Carmelo Anthony last night. But I was really struck because he was in the lane during that game. I watched a little bit of the game. And he was backing down the defender. Didn't have the ball, waiting for a feed. And I was thinking to myself, what the hell is that? I haven't seen that in a long time. So it really is almost like it's like Jurassic Park, watching a dinosaur. Here comes a woolly mammoth. So, but great job by Cam. Cam, sorry about the curveball there at the end. You want to run the one more clip of Howard Bryant of on Outside the Lines? It's only about a minute long. We ran an earlier clip from Howard Bryant. I love Howard Bryant. He's freaking awesome. And hopefully we'll get him on the show here shortly. Friend of mine, good guy. But he was on First Take last night.
So
yesterday.
I guess my point is, Colin Kaepernick walks in with the Kunta Kinte t-shirt. He says things about the league, stop running from the truth. Some would argue he did himself no favors. So let's
Many would argue that.
Yes. So I guess my point is, if he wanted to get back in the league, why use that kind of language? Why have that kind of situation?
Well, because Colin Kaepernick is provocative, and this is
but still, a lot of people are provocative. But still, when they walk in the employment door, if I'm provocative, but I sit down across from an ESPN counterpart trying to get a long-term job from them, I'm not going to start yelling at them. I'm going to do what I have to do to get the job.
But you're also not going to you're not going to walk into a job interview with ESPN on top of having 3 years of collusion, bad blood. I mean, so it's not like the NFL is innocent here. It's not as if you walk in and it's a clean job interview. You've got history here. You've got not only have a lack of trust, but you've got a lack of truth in terms of what is taking place between how these two sides have communicated with each other over the last several years.
Is it fair for him to ask for truth from the NFL when I think if you canvass a lot of NFL players, they'll say, hey, I don't always believe the NFL is honest with me, but this is what I have to do to play in the league.
It's 100% fair for him.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason, once again, is because of these extraordinary circumstances. It's not like, okay, you give us a call, we're going to put you at wide receiver, and then you actually put me at slot. It's not that. It is, you have been denied employment to the point where we needed to take litigation. We had to take action against you. So I don't think you can underestimate just how much distrust these two sides have.
How much distrust these two sides have. Great stuff from Howard Bryant. The thing about Howard Bryant is, people, the indication is, well, he's a bomb thrower. He's not a bomb thrower at all. If you follow him on Twitter, HBryant42, you need to. If you're an American, you should, because he is as well versed in American history as it pertains to sports as anybody I know. Sports history. And he does not contrive things or take them out of context. He uses that as a bridge to right now, as effectively as anybody. And he is all about building bridges. And so obviously I think he does a great job. And here's the thing. I want to say, wow, it's great that ESPN had him on. Well, he's employed by ESPN and the Undefeated, and they weren't going to have him on until like yesterday. And all of a sudden out of nowhere, because I was in communication with Howard about our show this week and over the weekend. And so he got the call. That's great. But that's something that ESPN should have done. They did a nice job having the coverage that they did. I was impressed. It is funny to see the demeanor, the look on the face of Stephen A. Smith at the beginning of Howard's appearance during First Take yesterday morning. And by the time it was over, what his demeanor was, Stephen A. Not happy. But here's the thing. There was no ad hominem attack. There was no screaming and yelling. There was no hot takes. No, it was calm. It was well thought out stuff from Howard Bryant, who has clearly contemplated this stuff and is a scholar, but understands how to make sense of it for all of us and apply what he knows about it's so important and critical. And I gave you an example as to why a second ago about Georgia football. And when I was 5 years old, there were no black players on the team and never had been. That's what I mean. It's that recent, and that's what he can really bring to the table. He can do it all, but I wish that guy had more of a platform on a consistent basis, because people really resonate to his commentary, which is so it's extraordinary, because it shouldn't be, but it's very much fact-based, grounded in history, but you'd never know it. That's the whole key. So that's going to do it for today here on Sports by Brooks on Fancred. We're going to be back tomorrow, as always, noon Eastern time, weekdays. Thanks to everybody at Fancred, and thanks to my producer, Cam Smith. And from Los Angeles, this is Brooks Melchior saying so long. This has been Sports by Brooks on Fancred.